It's great to see y'all for our annual meeting here today. 6 days into camp, install's intentionally really heavy. As we start things, we like to challenge guys early, both old and young, look at some new things, move people around, and really try to stretch them mentally and physically early in camp. So guys have been battling through that. With the new staff additions, the new additions in terms of players, I've been really pleased with how we've got things started. And guys have embraced, what it means to play defense at Georgia, the standard and expectations, and we look forward to continuing with practice 6 today.
You're going to get a lot of questions about defense, but I wanted to ask you about the other side of the ball since it's kind of you guys are working on yourself at this point. Who's giving you guys trouble on the offensive side of the ball and kind of been a problem for you this far in camp?
Well, it's a great opportunity every day to go against our offense. At every level, all the positions, offensive line, a ton of experience, really talented. Obviously, Carson plays at a really high level. There's depth in the running back room and in the receiver room and in the tight end room. So, when you have an offense, I think, where there's not one guy and every position group can be a threat, it's really challenging, for every position group on our side of the field. And it's an awesome opportunity for us to compete against them every day.
Yeah, Coach, you talk about starting install with overload, giving them as much as possible, but it requires being a great teacher, I think is what you mentioned last year. What's the key to being a good football teacher?
I don't know about overload. We just like to challenge them because growth in anything you do comes from challenging yourself. But you have to be detailed and you have to be a clear communicator. And, Coach Moore talks about assuming nothing. As a teacher, you can't assume that the people that you are delivering the message to are understanding what you are saying unless you get that communication back and forth. So I think those elements are important.
Glenn, how well did you know Travaris before he got here, and kind of what is that, another what does that look like?
We had met each other. I had always had the utmost respect for him, both as a coach and as a recruiter and just a person. And then Will spoke incredibly highly about him even before this opportunity came about. And, I trust Will and his opinion with just about everything. And, it's been awesome to have Travaris here, and he's been a great addition.
Glenn, kind of piggybacking off of that, what has it been like having Travaris and also Donte Williams, just them now part of this defensive staff?
Great energy, and they've bought into what we do. They knew what the expectations were here, and they embraced them, and they wanted them. And they've approached every day with a lot of passion and energy, and they really care about their players.
I know it's a collaborative effort on the defensive side of the ball, but with Will Muschamp, with all of the experience, how did he help you when you sort of took over those primary defensive play caller duties, and how has his role maybe changed a little bit since obviously moving into an analyst role?
Well, it's awesome to be able to have Will here. When he made the decision to move into an analyst role, the ability for us to keep him in the building and keep him part of the program, even before they approved, the coaching restrictions, was, a blessing to all of us. And the best thing and I'm thankful for Will in this regard, is as much as he's done in his career, Will does not have an ego in any way, shape, or form. So, that collaborative effort, he just wanted we worked together. He helped me grow in a lot of ways, and when things were difficult, he was a great, supporting cast member, and we worked, together as the whole defensive staff does every year.
Glenn, what have you seen from CJ and Raylen individually as they begin their second season, and with Smael, where is he with his foot injury?
Smael is doing a great job in his rehab. I would say he's exactly on track. He was moving around really well yesterday. We have a plan for him. He's following the plan with the maturity that you'd expect from a guy with his experience level, and as both a player and in age. CJ and Raylen, they really benefited from this spring, having the opportunity to take over, heightened leadership roles and in bowl prep, and they've only grown from that. I think you see an increased confidence in them, and those guys are really mature beyond their years in terms of how they prepare, and so they've been growing every day, and I'm excited about how they're going to play this year.
You
You mentioned how complimentary of Travaris Will was before y'all brought him in. Just how have you seen Will's influence on him as a coach?
I think, they talk about your closest circle of friends. Those are the people you end up being most like. Those influences as it pertains to T-Rob is he's incredibly passionate. He cares about the players. He is detailed, and he has he attacks everything that he does. He's not passive. He's urgent, and he's a really good football coach.
Yeah, Coach Smart talked about developing depth on the defensive line the other day. Just what have you seen so far in camp from both the younger guys taking on bigger roles, but also some of those veterans coming back, like Xzavier, I know Tyrion and Warren are battling through injuries, but some of the veterans as well.
We're still in the infancy of pads, and so I think that we're going to really see that group take the next step as we continue to have more padded practices. There's a lot of other positions where you can benefit from non-padded practices in terms of executing assignments, covering people, and things of that nature, but you only really get highly skilled at your craft up front and develop by putting the pads on and striking blockers and feeling, a 700 pounds in a double team, on that force on your body. So I think we're going to see those next steps being taken over the coming weeks.
Glenn, on Jalon Walker, he likes to, call himself a hybrid guy, but how do you maximize him and make sure that he's not just a jack of all trades, master of none kind of guy?
Well, I think we have a responsibility in two ways in everything we do. One, to do what's best for this team and this defense to be successful, as a unit, because those guys care about the collective goals. That's part of why they came here, the connection and the ability to play and compete for championships and play great defense. Two, we have a responsibility for each player to put them in the best position to have a career in football if their ability gives them the opportunity to do that. And so with Jalon, we have to expand his role because he's a talented player, and the best way to expand his role is to continue to develop him as a hybrid player while also, maximizing his opportunities to, do what he does best. So he's actually, he's really improved in both areas, and the way he's attacked practice, both from an effort and a leadership standpoint, has been really impressive. So I'm excited about where he's going.
Yeah, Coach, I'm sure you've talked about this in years past, but could you talk a little bit about your start in coaching? You started as a student assistant at Alabama, just the opportunity there, and then just what someone like you might have to overcome if they didn't necessarily play the game at a high level, but ultimately reach the pinnacle of it as a coach.
I'm going to try to sum this up to my best of my ability because that's a long story. But essentially, going into my senior year of high school, my dad was a coach, my mom was a coach, and I didn't necessarily ever want to be a coach, but I always wanted to be involved in athletics in some shape or form. Going into my senior year of high school, there was a moment at football practice where I helped another player with something, and I had the biggest rush of my life seeing them be successful after me helping them in some way, shape, or form. And kind of at that moment, I knew I wanted to coach. And my dad had played for Bear Bryant at Alabama. There's a Bryant scholarship. I had the opportunity to go there. And I essentially just came in and worked for, nothing at first and tried to just do anything I could to earn trust and respect and then grow my football knowledge from that point. I didn't necessarily set out to be a college football coach at that point. I just wanted to be a football coach. And then it's led me here, and I've tried to do the best job I could at each step of the journey. But that's as concise as I can be there. But that's kind of the summary.
Yeah, I guess similar to Jalon Walker, with Mykel Williams playing both defensive line and edge, how do you go about getting the most out of him this season, especially with those responsibilities increasing at outside linebacker?
Because of the style of defense that we play, the different personnel groupings, the packages, the way that we rotate and mix and match based on our opponent, the situation in the game, I think it gives us the opportunity to dual train guys like Mykel, guys like Jalon, guys like Gabe Harris. There's a lot of guys in the secondary. There's guys who play safety and star. We do this a lot in practice. On game day, their roles is based on what we think is best to win the game. But as these guys have matured and grown and been able to go through this learning process multiple times, they can take on more. And it makes it easier to play them in a variety of roles. And guys that can do multiple things, you obviously want to find ways to highlight them if they're productive. And Mykel's one of those guys, so he's going to, affect the game in a variety of ways this year.
What have you seen out of the outside linebacker room to this point in camp?
Those guys really starting in the off season, it was really unique. And I'm gonna go with the young guys. Obviously, there's the utmost respect for what Chaz brings to that room, and he has been a better version of himself this entire offseason. I think he's really attacked areas that he needed to grow. He's affected the passing game more, and he's done a better job in terms of what he's done in space while remaining a tough, gritty player. Kind of that sums up the whole room in a lot of ways. You have guys that last year with some of the young guys who they were really good in one area, and that position requires a lot. You have to be able to cover, Robert Beal is running down the field covering Emeka Egbuka in the peach ball on a wheel route, stride for stride with him, right? That's part of the job responsibility. You have to be able to set edges and rush the passer. It's because of the style of defense we play, it's a really hybrid role, even though it's an edge player. So those guys in that room have all kind of attacked their weaknesses, whether that's Damon's put on a lot of weight, gotten stronger in the run game. Gabe has become a position versatile player that, was really just a hand-down DN before, and now he's a much more well-rounded out player. Sam Mpemba, he's a guy that didn't play a lot of outside backer before his senior year at IMG, and so he's grown a lot as a football player. That whole room, and Quindavis Johnson has done a really good job. So those guys that are in that room, I think that they've all attacked the areas they needed to improve, which is what you expect of people if they want to grow, and they've done a really good job. So I'm pleased with that room to this point in camp.
Coach, we're approaching the 3-week mark to the opener against Clemson. Never too early to talk about that. What can you tell us at this point about what you know about Clemson, and how different might they be than maybe when you guys opened against them in 2021, or that's some things you're still trying to figure out?
I think when the purpose of camp, right, is that we are, our focus right now is on getting better. It's focusing on our installation, focusing on our players and their development. When it's this window of time for these 2 weeks that you have to attack your technique and fundamentals, okay, your mental part of the game, your every area that you need to focus on toward yourself. Because if you become a better player, if each person, each coach grows themselves over this period of time, that'll pay more dividends than just about anything that you'll do in opponent prep. In terms of them, we shift our focus once we've made it through the conclusion of camp and we've kind of figured out who's on the bus and what seats are they in. And in terms of their program, obviously what Coach Swinney has done there has been outstanding. They added, they have Coach Riley, Garrett Riley, that was at the offensive coordinator at TCU when they were outstanding. The year we played them in the national title game, and then they added Matt Luke to the rest of their offensive staff, and it should be a great game.
What are you looking to differentiate between Daniel Harris, Julio, as they compete at cornerback?
Well, that whole room is still in competition. So I just single out those two guys. There's a lot of young players in that room, because whether it's young based on experience or age, everybody is constantly growing. And I think when you look at them, you have to be able, when to play corner in college football, you have to be able to not only be a guy that's a man-to-man cover guy, you have to be able to show up in the run game, perimeter block destruction for bubble screens, and be a good tackler. So that's really what we need out of that position in general, is to be able to be successful in man-to-man, play the ball down the field, and still be able to be a factor in the perimeter block destruction game and tackling. And I think that, those guys flash in each of those areas, but increased toughness, it's a monster. It's part of the Georgia defense, part of playing defense in general. And as those guys continue to grow in that area, they'll become better players.
Yeah, Kirby at SEC Media Days mentioned KJ Bolden, said he prepares like a veteran even as a young player. Wouldn't ask you to speak for Kirby on that, but what does that mean to you? What do you think he's probably talking about there?
being a freshman, no matter how much success you have, whether you're instantly successful or whether you have to go through some of the growing pains that guys have gone in the past, just the transition from going to high school to college, it's hard on a normal student, right? And what separates guys that are able to help you when they're young and versus guys who it takes some time, a lot of times doesn't necessarily have to do with ability, it has to do with maturity in their prep. It does not mean that guys who don't play early don't have the maturity, but the maturity in terms of being a pro every day and not having to acclimate as much to the demands of college football, it helps them. And I think in terms of how he approaches his business, he's had a maturity about himself since he's been here. And if you match that up with ability and you continue to grow, you have a chance, to be a good player. But I think his maturity has impressed me. From the moment he's been here, he's been very serious. And that's, focus on the task at hand, which is what you need to do on a day in and day out basis.
I want to ask you about 3 players. Can you give us the latest on Ellis Robinson, what you've seen in him, how he's doing after Saturday? McLeod, the transfer, we haven't heard a whole lot about him. And Troy Bowles, the kind of guy that we don't hear as much about in that inside linebacker room.
I'm going reverse there. So, Troy did a really good job attacking his physical development this offseason. And also, he really didn't play much linebacker coming into college. So there's the development as a linebacker and then the physical development. And I think he's done a really good job in that regard. Obviously, his skill set in the past of being a guy who played DB, it helps. He has a unique coverage skill set that as we continue to grow him as a backer, he has the opportunity to be a really good player. Xzavier McLeod has been really active. He obviously has size. When I say active, I'm just saying he's a really good athlete for his size. And so when he's able to move, right, which is very helpful, he has to be able to go and show up in the run game in terms of anchoring double teams at the point of attack, which, like I said, we just put pads on a few days ago. As time goes on, we'll continue to grow in that area. And Ellis, his approach in fall camp has been what it needs to be in terms of attacking. The demands of a practice at Georgia are, the way if y'all took in the open practice or people who are there, it's a lot on high school guys transitioning. I think that he's, attacked his personal conditioning and everything else to be able to maximize his ability. And I don't mean that to say that he wasn't, but there's a lot of demands on that position to be able to be at your best every snap. And I think the way that he's approached that has given him an opportunity to compete in camp, and he has to continue to do that.
One more question right here.
Hey, Glenn, kind of hopping back to the secondary just a second. Joenel Aguero, second year, what have you seen from his development as far as his role? And how much did he learn last year just being around watching Tyke and the way he went about his business?
I think that's one of the most underrated aspects of coming to play football at Georgia is the people that you get to play with that become a part of your circle, that you get to learn from, that become a part of your family. And so he had the opportunity to learn from 3 guys, not just those 3, but those 3 guys that left here last year were incredibly detailed and mature, and they went about their business the right way. And I think that, that it really helped him go